Okay. Um,
I think we're good to start if you'd like.
yeah, I think we've got a pretty good list, and we have at least I see the names of our delegates and everything. It's terrific. So, okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope that you are having a nice spring and enjoying the great weather and surviving, what's going on at our next door neighbor city here of North Washington, D.C. So, um, but anyway, we have lots of good stuff to do, and that's what we're going to focus on. So, do we have anybody participating today who has not participated before, or is substituting for somebody else? If so, would you introduce yourself, please? I guess we have. So I guess we have the usual suspects. That's good. Okay. All right. So let's. I guess with that, let's look at our agenda today, and if Ainsley can put it up, that'd be great. I presume everybody got the mailings and all that. So if you have any trouble getting stuff from us, please let us know. If you look at the agenda, the very top thing you can see is Dropbox link to meetings and materials. You copy that. If you don't have it already, you can access everything from this commission and all our meetings to date that has been put in there, and plus a number of other things, relevant documents. So if you miss something, you can be able to find it there. So welcome again. And so we have some housekeeping duties here. We first of all have the approval and discussion of the minutes from April 3rd. So if you have that, I'd like to see if anybody has any questions about it. I'll just go through it real quick. If there's any questions, we'll go over this later. Ainsley talked about the correctional institution visits coming up, and of course they've been postponed until the summer. And we have House Bill 877, which we'll talk about a little more today. Andrea Cantora gave her higher education update. So if there's any questions, as I mentioned, any of these sections, please just pipe right in and say something. Diana Bailey gave her career technology and workforce development update, and so her notes are in there. And she had a pretty good long discussion. And we talked about the data request from the Department of Labor. Alyssa Fiao talked about special education. Rumiko talked about disability screenings and accommodations. And then John and I talked about data collection process again. And we mentioned wait lists and library and reentry resources, talked about that. And we talked for a while. Gordon raised the issue about being able to talk on the visits to residents, and we discussed that about whether or not they would be open or not to telling things as they see it, or whether they might be intimidated, depending on who's at the meetings. And let's see, is there anything else? So what are there any additions, or is anything inaccurate? I know Ainsley takes great care of going through as we record these meetings and going through and the recording is available if anybody wants to see them. I've gone through some of the videos and it's really good, because sometimes I think I hear something and then listen to it again and I've heard something else. I guess there's one clarification if nobody else has one. John, when we talked last time at the last commission meeting, you said that the data collection process is piecemeal as there's no database, and data is collected in Microsoft Excel due to technology limitations. So And then the department is putting out a procurement upgrade its database. So could you explain that a little more? Because I always thought the database was fairly complete. Of course, we're going to get, some of us are going to set up a meeting with James, what is it, Bowden, and have him demonstrate that system. But can you talk more a little bit about that, a little clarification that it's piecemeal? I thought it was one single database, you know, with each principal putting in and his staff putting in information each on a daily basis. So could you, and then that makes Microsoft Excel. I don't understand that. If you could just give me some clarification.
Yeah, that was more in reference. I can't remember what the specific question was, but it was a specific type of data that we didn't collect in the database. And I actually have Rochelle Rubin here, who could probably explain more in general terms. But again, I remember that question coming up. It was in reference, I thought, to a very specific piece of data that we were trying to count, or somebody asked the question, why don't we have this particular thing on a daily basis? Why don't we know about this? I can't remember what the conversation was, but there is a database that still, for the most part, can be considered fragmented. But Rochelle, can you give us kind of just an overview of CE main, what that covers, some of the data that may not be captured in CE main, if any?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So there is a unified database. I think I'm not sure what was discussed. So if I'm repeating anything, please forgive me. So we do have a unified database. I think one of the issues is that the database was created by the individual you mentioned, Jim Bowden, who you said you're trying to procure. The database was created by Jim and is controlled by Jim. So we only have one person that works the entire CE educational data from that aspect for the state. He writes the program, right? So they're much more user-friendly and quickly accessible programs that we're certainly interested in or updating. So one of the issues with the collection of the data is that, and that it's the inputting. So I'm trying not to be fragmented in how I describe it. So it is heavily dependent on the accurate inputting from the institutional side. And then the other piece is that sometimes I'll give a tangible example, attendance. There were a variety of indicators for how attendance is collected. And so if everyone didn't have the same understanding about attendance, we ended up getting fragmented data for that. So we had to go back and do a retraining around that, and then come up with just very basic indicators. So if it's an institutional closing, this is what you click. If it was closed on the DPSCS side, this is what you click. If it was closed for professional development on the labor side, this is what you click. And that is inherent to the structure of our current and existing database. So oftentimes when we get reports and we have to run the information, we are heavily reliant on Jim going through and making sure that all of the indicators are accurate for what we're being asked, that the input was there, that it gets in, and then rerunning the report to just make sure that we're giving and providing as accurate a picture as possible. That's one half. The second half is that, so I've developed some Excel files. I don't know if that was the question John was referring to, but in terms of like tracking GEDs, for example, we've had to create our own internal files so that we're able to track that. And there is a GED analytics in the current existing database, but remember for a while, even on the DPSCS side, first, we didn't know for the longest while until we started the data subcommittee meeting that OCMS was not talking to our database system. And so we had to get that rectified to be able to make sure that the data was accurate. And I draw back to GEDs. We've had to create our own just so it's timely, it's accurate, and we're monitoring, because this year the principals were provided GED goals as we make our way to trying to see how we can get closer to pre-pandemic levels, as we are simultaneously talking about the issues that are inherently impacting our ability to do so. And so having a database system that is on hand, that is accessible, that is user-friendly, that is timely, I do think is a priority, and it was listed as a priority in the report, which I was pleased about.
Okay. All right. I think the data stuff is going to come up a lot again. And so when we haven't scheduled the interview with James Bowden, as you said, he put this system together. So I'd like to make sure that anybody wants to be on that when we set it up can do that. Especially hope that some people like Ann could be on it, and Danielle, because you guys have had either experience with it or you're just really good at data structure, software, etc. Because it's crucial that we be able to understand how the data is put together, whether it's immediately accessible, whether it's being used, etc. But you also said here a procurement to upgrade your database to collect. So you're having somebody come in to help you with your Excel or to update the base that James has put together? What is that?
Rochelle, you can go ahead. It's a whole new thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a whole new thing. So we're very interested in utilizing a software that allows us to look at the existing database and then take that and really dig and delve much deeper into our programmatic outcomes. So looking at who has what within our program and then aligning that to the reentry work alongside our workforce development office so that we are able to accurately track programmatic outcomes. So are our individuals, for the certifications that they attain when they're with us, do they get employed in that field? And there's only one way for us to do that, which is to sort of stay with them for a period of time upon release. And certainly CE does that to a modicum, but that it doesn't currently in its current iteration have the ability to do that.
Okay, well, where I'm coming from, and we don't have to discuss this, but just to let you know, is that there seems to be a number of databases. Public Safety has a database, the Department of Labor has a number of databases, and then if there's 2 or 3 going around in correctional, are they all talking to each other, all accessible? So there's not over duplication or we're missing something that, so I think that's a crucial thing that I want to keep on coming back to in the next couple of months. Okay, anyway, so that's one item, and I don't want to. We got so many other things to do. I don't want to. Somebody else wanted to say something.
Yeah, Steve, I just want to make a point really quick. Like people are bringing up our database, DPSCS. DPSCS does not collect education data. DPSCS gets the data from CE Student. It is integrated, and there is an upload from CE Student into OCMS. So the only way we ever get data is if labor system actually sends that data to us. We take and input post-secondary data into our data system, but anything that is adult basic ed, GED, CTE programming has to be that connection between those two databases. Okay. And at this time, to be able to go to any database that is not the way that CE Student is set up and integrated and locked down, and it was purposely done that way for security purposes. We currently do not have the infrastructure that we are looking into it, but that is down the road to be able to do anything that is, we have no Wi-Fi in the school, we have no direct internet access, we have no cloud system. So in order to do anything additional, I just want to make it clear that that is something that would have to be looked at for infrastructure before we could ever go to anything other than what is currently available.
Okay. So I hope Dollar and DPSCS, and we'll talk about this more, are working together on this kind of stuff, because otherwise we're doing the same, maybe doing the same thing over and over again without connecting. So I want to make sure that's the case. Okay, but I don't want to belabor that anymore. Thank you, Danielle and Rochelle and John, for all that. So is there anything else on the minutes? If not, I'd ask if anybody will vote for approval, for the notes. Anybody want to voice concern, or if not, can we approve the notes? Anybody? All right, John Griffin, do you approve the notes? Do you first cast your vote to approve the votes, not the notes? Yes.
I
Okay,
seconded it.
who seconds it? Gordon?
I seconded Gordon.
Thank you. Okay, so the notes are approved. Thank you very much. We have, I looked in the notes, we have, I have Delegate Marlon Ampry, that's either the delegate himself or Ian Genovese as Chief of Staff. So, and on to talk about HB 877. So, delegate or Ian, you're on, and we have a copy of the letter that was sent out. I hope everybody got it. So, are you there, delegate? Or Ian?
Dr. Stewart's Ian Genovese, everybody. It's
Morning.
Ian Genovese from Delegate Ampry's office. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me on. And unfortunately, the delegate's on a business call right now and couldn't move his things around. So I'm going to be taking part of this meeting on his behalf. But just as you all saw in the letter, I just want to reiterate what the delegate wanted to say. Basically, first and foremost, thank you for all the work that you all have done since September with Dr. Stewart and the whole commission. With House Bill 877, I think the last time we all spoke, we got to a general consensus where we were going to amend the bill to keep the reporting dates the same from when this commission was established. And so far, we were on that track. We were amending the bill. However, the tight timeline got in the way. I think Delegate Embry might be on this call, and Delegate Simpson as well. But in the subcommission with Delegate Moon, the amendments initially were passed. However, I think when there was some deliberations behind the scenes that we do not know what happened, but apparently the original version of the bill got passed and the amendments didn't go through. And with all the budget bill talks and things like that, we just ran out of time on House Bill 877. And rather than the commission just completely dying, we'd rather have the original version go through first. So some possible next steps that the delegate, Dr. Stewart, and us, we all discussed, we're probably thinking just, go through it with the reporting that you all have done anyways before the upcoming legislative session. That way, we'll have to figure out how we can get that to the Maryland General Assembly, perhaps through a memorandum or just a briefing with the committees. But we think, and through the discussions with Dr. Stewart, we think that, delaying the reporting of what you all have done would definitely push things back. And so forth, we don't want to get in the way of that. And we would rather have something be submitted before the upcoming session, so that we can, any possible legislations that we need to take and submit, we can have it done on time. But essentially, that's what the letter entails, and that's what the delegate wanted to share with everybody. And we can definitely things up with HB 877 on the next session. And and thank you again overall for all the work that y'all have done.
Well, thank you, and thank the delegate. I wonder, since we have two or three delegates on the call, at least if any of them have any comment on the letter from your colleague, Delegate Ampry. So Delegate Simpson and who else? I'm looking at the list here. Delegate Embry, do you have any comments?
I do. Just thank you, Ian. I don't know what happened. I think it was maybe just missed. The amendments were just missed, given, as you said, all the hectic things that go on towards the end of session. But I agree with his assessment and recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else make a comment? If staff members are on for their delegate, you're welcome to make a comment too. But
No, I'm here. This is Delegate Pasteur. I've been here. I'm
I've
here.
seen your name. I wasn't sure if it was you, but welcome again. You're always here, so I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I'm always here. Okay. No, I agree. Certainly whatever has been done is wonderful, but there's more to be done. So that's where I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
appreciate the extension. And I do think this is one of those things that we were talking about out in the hallway with the back and forth with the Senate versus the House. So I think that's probably where, but at least it got extended. So that's good. And we can always make adjustments.
Terrific. So with that, the sense from the legislature, we have 4 great representatives, offices represented here. I mean, I think this is wonderful that we get some clarification, and we'll go forward with calling these the inaugural, interim, and annual reports instead of what was originally interim and final report. So, because we are going to continue for at least 3 more years after that, and there we'll really start focusing work on specific things afterward. But so, is there any objection to this? Does anybody have any issue with this? I think it clarifies our work and gives us a roadmap, much better, clearer roadmap. But someone that may have some different feelings or even some suggestions to improve what we have here. Anything at all?
I like where we are focusing in the interim report. I think that's a good idea to narrow it down so that we look at, especially now that it's been extended, right? So we can look at year by year. So what's that most important thing to look at this year? And take that and move forward with the other one. So I do like how you've done that, Steve.
Okay, yeah, and we all have to approve, the commission is going to have to approve this interim report. So this is a proposed outline, and some things may well be missing, or people may have, some comments on any of the issues we put forward. But they all came from many of you and from the stakeholders group. So, okay. So with that, I guess we're going to proceed. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I had my hand up. I did want to say, and I'll bring this up on the latter part of the agenda, but I wasn't present for many of the meetings. I do feel like, especially around GED, I have some thoughts about some of and it's an excellent report, by the way, some of the direction around where we went with that. So I'm hoping I might be able to share some of those thoughts later.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what this is for. We want to get anybody who's got information and opinions to just put them out there so we can all appreciate them and discuss them. So no problem, Rochelle. Okay, so I would appreciate, Ian, if you would thank the delegate, and hopefully he may have a minute to join us at any point. And if he does, he can break in. So just let us know, and you don't have to raise your hand like Rochelle. Sometimes I don't see it, or Ainsley is supposed to just pipe in. So Ian, thank you so much. And I really must say, having 3 delegates on this meeting regularly has been terrific. And we adjusted time-wise for you a little bit. And having Delegate Ambry as our sponsor, and the interest and the devotion you guys have is terrific. And it inspires me, because I know when we go to the legislature, we have people like you who are going to be able to help us make the case for anything we want to do. So thank you so much.
Dr. Stewart, and thank you all again. I think everybody have a great collective mind here to get the job done. And as everybody know, this is a personal matter with the delegate, and he wants to make sure he sees everything, gets everything done, and gets everything through. So yeah, anything we do anything we need to do to help, just let us know and we'll be here.
Okay.
Well,
you have been, and I appreciate that. You guys have been there all the time and very helpful and responsive. So, okay, so that's our update, and we're going to proceed forward. The next piece is discussion on correctional education delivery system. We have Ainsley, would you explain how this was all put together and what happened here? Because we interviewed live about 6 state directors, and then we sent out a survey. So this is the summary. So Ainsley, would you please go forward with this nice summary you put together?
Yeah, of course. And this will probably be a little bit brief. This is just to frame our conversation around different models of prison education. So what Dr. Stir and we've reached out to a number of correctional education directors in different states to ask about what they like about their models and what they don't like about their models. And from those conversations, we kind of got a list of things that they thought were really good things that were happening in their state, as well as things that they'd like to see improvements on. And so from that list, we sent out a survey to all of the correctional education directors in the nation, and we got some good feedback from them on their different state models. So they ranked different issues, what was important to them, what they felt like was helping them or hurting them in their state models, and gave us some feedback. So for this first question, we asked what the biggest barriers were that they were having in administering correctional education. Space issues were by far the biggest barrier that people were facing when administering correctional education, shortly followed by insufficient educational staff. So like teachers, administrators, then insufficient funding, insufficient correctional staff, inadequate incentives for participation, inadequate access to technology. Finally, the least were lack of continuing professional education for staff and lack of support from their Department of Corrections or other agency if it was outside of the Department of Corrections. A couple of the states had like school districts that they provide correctional education through. So we can really see that a lot of the things that we're discussing in Maryland, that the space issues and insufficient funding and the insufficient correctional staff are nationwide issues.
They really seem to be similar to a lot of the issues we raised. So we're in the ballpark with lots of other states, it seems. By the way, Danielle facilitated this because she's a member of the Correctional Education State Directors Group, and that's a closed group. So you have to have somebody who's a member like Danielle get access. And they were very helpful to us and responded and helped us do this. So thank you, Danielle. Also, I'd urge if people like Rochelle, since I don't know if you're participating with the Correctional Education Association, it's the professional association for people who work in juvenile and adult correctional facilities. And so I hope that you guys participate. I'm being a little self-serving because I was director of that association for 29 years, but I appreciate the value of it. That's why I stayed that long, because it's not an easy job, so thank you, Danielle. And I urge, I'm a big proponent of professional development. Do you want to go to the next slide, Ainsley?
Couple hands.
And Rochelle had her hand up. So
I just, for the record, I really strongly suggest that we put nationwide as the qualifier for the statement at the top. I can see us looking at this 6 months from now and us, maybe thinking that this might be specific to Maryland. And I don't agree with the ranking order of these. I agree that a lot overlap, but certainly not in this order. So nationwide, I think, is an important distinction to make for when we look back at this data.
Yeah, I'm sure there's different order for each state, Yeah,
we can definitely do that. That's good feedback. Thank you.
And so, Ainsley, you want to go with the next slide?
Rochelle?
I'm just
We have
gonna
one more hand.
very quickly, Ainsley, I don't know if you're gonna get to this. I was looking at numbers 2, 4, and 7 in particular, and then wondering if you tracked nationwide the model. So was there a difference in the model when all of correctional education was under one thing or 2 different agencies, or how? I was curious about that. And in reference to the insufficient staffing, I wanted to know if you got a little bit more information, like scale, salary scale, contractual versus permanent pin, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. This was more of just like a baseline survey, so it was very brief. We were trying to get as many people as possible, rather than going for depth. So that is a future effort that we can definitely take on, but this was just like a really quick survey.
Yeah, and so we do intend, that's one of the activities that we want to continue to study. It's a big, important issue about how an agency is situated, what its power is, what its independence, if it has any, or et cetera. So yeah, we really need to, I mean, it would be good to know which states, and Joe, and I think Danielle can agree or not, she can disagree if she wants, but we have a different model in almost every state, somewhat different, but there are some that tend to be more corrections oriented, school system oriented, whatever. And so, but there's no similar model. Some states have tried to copy each other, and then they come up with a hybrid. Maryland years ago copied Pennsylvania, and then Pennsylvania went and changed to something else. And the stuff is also fluid. So, do you want to go to the next slide then?
Yes. So this is the biggest supports in administering correctional education. This is what people felt was really strong for their models, their different models. The biggest support by far was strong support from the Department of Corrections or other agencies. So we can see that having strong support from the people who are in charge is really helpful. Closely followed by the Education Division is high up in the Department of Corrections or other agency. So the ability to, talk to those high level officials and really make education a priority. After that, most of the answers were kind of the same. Funding, access to technology, incentives, adequate continuing professional development, educational staff, and correctional staff. So definitely that strong support, that big connection to the higher level officials was the biggest thing that people thought was helpful for administering correctional education in their states.
Okay.
And then finally, we got a couple different comments and different perspectives on what makes a strong model. So there was a couple different models that we reached out to. The first was and we reached out to everyone, but there were different state models that we got feedback from. So a number of them had their correctional education housed in their Department of Corrections, and the comments that they made were that the education administrator needs to be a staff of the Department of Corrections. They need to have a strong unit in the Department of Corrections, and that they really liked having that internal management of correctional education because they have the in-house tools to do everything that they need to do. The second model was a school district model. So usually they had funding from like the state education department, or they had like a superintendent of schools. They felt like the best model would be a school district. There's a school district who was part of the Department of Corrections, and they thought that worked really well. They're viewed as a distinct entity in the eyes of the state education department. And finally, operating as a school district within a correctional education has challenges, but they are committed to overcoming these obstacles and maintaining their role as a school district because they feel that model is important. And finally, a number of states have college-university partnerships where they reach out to community colleges, colleges and universities to administer their correctional education. So their workforce development, GED prep, and colleges and stuff like that. So they said that the Department of Corrections, their partnerships were really important and have been a huge support for them. So we kind of have a lot of different models going on that different states feel are strong, that they enjoy. And then I think we have hands from Adam and I think someone else.
John had his hand up first.
Yeah.
All right, so I just wanted to make a suggestion as I'm listening to everything that's been presented today. And this suggestion is for the interim report. When I read the report, I noticed that there was mention about correctional staffing. But in my humble opinion, I don't think that the mention of correctional staffing is high enough in terms of priority on the report. I say this because when you look at our situation in correctional education today, in my opinion, based on my lived experience within the system, correctional staffing is a big limiting factor. We see this in the data nationwide, as Ainsley just presented, but here in Maryland, it's really, really big. And if we don't have adequate staffing on the custody side, education programs can't run. And this is not the fault of DPSCS. This is not the fault of DLR. This is not the fault of the teachers. It's just a reflection of, I guess, the employment environment in the state. The state's having trouble hiring officers and retaining officers. So I'm wondering if, we should kind of increase the priority of this a little bit in our report so that the governor understands that this problem with, retaining staffing really affects things to the point where it's a limiting factor. We can make all these different proposals and suggestions on how to improve education delivery, but none of it's going to work if there's no officer at the post to allow the education to run. So that's what I wanted to say.
John, you're right on. And so when we get, this is more pertinent to the interim report, but it's also in the feedback we got on the survey. So yeah, the interim report lists the issues, and the next thing we do, I'll say this again, that we're going to give each subcommittee back their issues and want them to round them out and then prioritize them. Maybe it'd be a good idea. But correctional staffing is you can't run it. You can't run a bus line without bus drivers. There's always some pivotal thing there. So, but I think Adam had his hand up next. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if the correctional directors that you spoke to, if any of these models based on statistics have been particularly successful compared to the other ones.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Dr. Sir, if you want to go ahead.
No, go ahead, Don.
There has been a little bit of research as to what model works the best. And I'm hoping that we can reach out to those researchers. The field of correctional, it's hard to, anyways, there's been a little bit of research is what I'm going to say. And we hope to speak to them more, but we don't want to make any conclusions right now as it pertains to Maryland about what we think a strong educational model would look like.
Some of the research has been done by the Wren Corporation, by Lois Davis. And Lois and I became friends over the years because I worked on I was one of the advisors on the first boards for the recidivism study. And she emailed me the other day when she wants to talk, and she wants to help us any way possible for free. At some point they may get some money to do a project if we ever got it with the Wren Corporation, but she's doing this pro bono. So that's one of the things I'm going to ask her to really give us an opinion on school districts from her experience and her data. And so, yes, we're going to follow up on that. And Adam, by the way, I tried to email you the other day. Your old email at MCE bounced back. So if you would be so kind as to email your new email, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So any more discussion on this? We are definitely going to go into this after this interim report. We're going to definitely spend more time. John, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. First and foremost, wanted to second John Griffin. Fantastic. I agree with you 100% on that. Number two, I wanted to mention, are these 3 slides going to be mentioned in any way in the interim report? Like, do we plan to include these in the interim report that goes out?
Well, when we look at the body of the report, we have to decide what we can maybe send as an attachment. I want to keep the report to 5 or 10 pages, and then we can reference, we can send these other things along with the interim report. So we will capture everything. Again, this goes into the Dropbox, so we have it. And we're going to keep all these things.
Well, then that's a good segue to my third question, which is I just want to mention that, and we have delegates on the line as well. Whatever information we include in the interim report, a lot of those folks are super busy. It may easily be construed that these are Maryland priorities, Maryland perspectives. It may get, thank you, Ainsley. I appreciate it. But more importantly, with just this very specific slide that we have here, we don't have a labor perspective on running the program. That one's actually missing from this. And I think it would be a big miss to not be able to provide a labor perspective for them to review when this interim report comes out. So it kind of strikes me that nobody has a labor model in the survey. Yeah. Maybe Maryland's all alone, I don't know, but I think it would be important to have that in there as well.
Actually, that's, Steve, what I was going to comment on. Maryland is the only state in which correctional education is within the Department of Labor, period. That's
yep.
it. So a vast majority, over 80%, are within the Department of Corrections, as the Department of Corrections actually completely runs it, or it is a school district that is housed within the Department of Corrections. That is pretty much all of them. We're the only ones that function like the way that we do, just to let you know.
Yeah, there are some long-running school districts, like Ohio has a Ohio Central School System, and then Texas Wyndham, and there's a few others. There's also a Maryland Department of Education model that used to be in Maryland. West Virginia has superintendent of schools, but those are not as common either. So, yeah, so we should get some more detail from these people as we put stuff together and have a much more expansive report. And I don't see any reason why the questions we just sent it to the list that Danielle gave us, and Rochelle, you're not on that list, so maybe we can send you the questions if you want to answer them and send them, and we can add them comments and get the labor perspective. So Ainsley, is that okay if you can send her the questions that we sent out to the state directors? And then
just for clarity, the reason why is because we only sent out to those who are correctional education administrators, state directors on that specific council. So they were only the ones that were on the Council of Education Directors. That is why Rochelle did not get it.
Yeah, and there are some states who are, I don't know how many are not represented, but it doesn't represent all 50 states.
No, there is somebody from all 50 states on it.
Is there now? Okay, because that was a problem in the past. Okay, that's a great update. Good. So, okay. So shall we move on then? Go ahead.
We have one more person with their hand up, Yvonne.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but.
Good morning, you did. Yvonne Brawley Wilson. I am the correctional ombudsman for the state. I am interested in knowing if the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman can receive a copy of the questions as well as the survey responses. Just, we'd like to read through it.
Absolutely. And I does everybody know, Yvonne, I'm sorry, because I was looking through the names and I didn't.
Yeah, my mic wasn't working for some reason when you asked to announce if this is, your first time attending, and so I couldn't click it. I had to actually log out and log back in to be able to get my mic to work. So I apologize. I did put it in the chat, but couldn't speak up at the time.
Can you explain your new position? I mean, this was a great law that was passed.
Absolutely, I'd love to. So as I stated, my name is Yvonne Brawley Wilson. And I was appointed back in September to this position, started in October. It's been a whirlwind, started in October and had my confirmation hearing in February, and I'm sworn in March and again last week in Montgomery County to be the correctional ombudsman for the state. The way it works is we provide correctional oversight for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, as well as the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit has been also moved under my supervision. And so we report directly to the governor. We are an independent agency. And the way we look at it is the goal is to really, first of all, we're a branch with a tree with two branches, oversight for corrections and oversight for juvenile. And, hopefully if things work out the way they're intended to work out, then we will improve the efficiency for the Department of Juvenile Services and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services.
Well, I really appreciate you, and you're welcome to join any of our meetings, because you guys have the ability to go in anywhere at any time.
We do.
talk to anybody.
And Adam, I will say, Adam is now with our agency. He's the executive administrator for the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman and doing an amazing job.
You beat me to it. I wanted to say, isn't Adam working for you now? I mean,
He is working for the agency, yes, and doing, like I said, an amazing job.
terrific. Well, I really want to share anything and everything we do in our reports, so we can automatically send out reports to you guys so that you're up to, because there might be some point where we really, you really want to come in and see something, and we would love that. So
Thank you. We appreciate that so much.
I think Rochelle has her hand up.
mhm.
Just first of all, congratulations, Yvonne. That's
Nice to
amazing.
see you again.
Good to see you again. And I think just a couple of things that I wanted to mention as it pertains to our last discussion. I think part of the rationale for moving correctional education from MSDE to labor was that close alignment with workforce development, which was to ensure that returning citizens were able to get employed and showed up in the labor market. So I do think it should be a significant part of the conversation that we're having as we talk about models. And then I think the data. So it's sort of counterintuitive if we're thinking about it, right? Staffing for corrections is an issue, right? Timeliness, data, technology. But then we have to look at all of that in comparison to returning citizen outcomes and recidivism outcomes. So I do feel like that needs to be a huge part of the discussion, because that's the return on investment discussion that we're having. One of the biggest reasons that the commission was put in place, I believe.
Yeah. And it's ironic that for years we couldn't really track as well, and now we're trying to do that, but we weren't able to really capture who got jobs afterwards. And so how do you tell whether your programs are ultimately effective? Because the purpose of corrections to me is back in society, productive citizen, which means work, family. You can't track work, then we don't know. And
which is why it's at labor for the record. So if we're the only one that has that model, I think that we are the pioneer in that model as opposed to the standout.
yeah, but I think we also need to put it, and we didn't ask the question to state directors, but my awareness in other states is, I mean, they try to work with labor wherever it is, who's ever running it. So it's a holistic concept. It's kind of hard. We got so many agencies that need to be working together with a person coming out the door. You got health issues, you got job issues, you got education issues, you name it. And so the coordination of these efforts, there's all kinds of models, but which one works the best? And so it's a judgment call in some cases, but we hope to get all the data we can, the information we can. We've got some years now to look at this and start, fine tuning it. So. But I really appreciate it. So all your work on this. And so are there any more questions? Because I want to make sure I can look at the clock here. We're moving along with 10:50 here. Wanted to look at the outline of the interim report. So if that's okay, we're going to go to that. And I hope you all had a chance to look at it. Ainsley, you want to talk about how you got this format?
Yeah, of course. This is just the standard format that our office uses for reports. First off, we just have like a little introduction to, this is going to go to Governor Moore, President Ferguson, and Speaker Jones. We're going to fill out a little bit of the background of why correctional education is important, the history of correctional education in Maryland, how correctional education works currently in Maryland, and why the commission was formed. Down just to the commission role and responsibilities, the law here, and how we integrated the work groups and the advisory stakeholder group, the members of the commission and the advisory stakeholder group members, what we've done so far as a commission. And the most important part for us to talk about right now is the different issues that have been raised. So we have a couple different sections. This first one is for the commission-wide focuses, things that we keep seeing across different across different work groups, down to things that we see at specific work groups. And the way that this is formatted is the topic is in bold, then there's an issue statement. And then once we get through all the issue statements, part of the job of the work groups throughout the next month is to give a really brief overview of the issue in like a couple of sentences, because we don't want this to be super long. So this is not the complete interim report by any means. This just highlights the different issues that we've seen across the commission and work groups so far.
One of the things I hope we could do just for a few minutes, we have 3 chairs of the subgroups. Andrea Cantora was in charge of higher education. She's also on the commission. Diana Bailey is in charge of the career technology and workforce development group. And the ABE GED special ed group was kind of jointly chaired by Judy Lichtenberg, Ainsley, and myself. Couldn't come up with a volunteer to take on the whole task. So these were the issues. So I'd like to see, for example, if Andrea has any comments on the higher education items that we listed here. Are you with us today, Andrea?
I'm here.
Good, great. Could you comment on it? Is this a pretty good summary of the issues you brought up, and that we're going to want your group in the next few weeks to meet and talk about putting some flesh on each of these items. So go ahead and
yeah,
let me know.
Thank you. No, I'm looking at page 10 where the higher ed work group issues are listed, and we meet, I believe, the end of this month. So in about 3 weeks from now, we meet and we'll add to this document. One thing that we've talked about in our group is the fact that the University System of Maryland's office did a study of higher ed in Maryland, and they wrote a really nice report that we can tap into, because everything in their report is everything we've been talking about. So we have a lot of information already gathered on each of these areas. And one thing not listed here that I mentioned at the very end of our last work group meeting, and I actually don't see this anywhere in this report. I think at some point in time, we need to add in reentry for higher ed, but actually for all of these groups. So that's an item missing for our higher ed work group, but also missing for all the groups. And I think it's something in future meetings that we need to kind of focus on, because all of these programs, even when they're operating well inside, we need to make sure people are getting connected to work on the outside once they leave these programs.
It's now entered as an issue, and I think we've talked about reentry in some other places, but we haven't talked about, but if you want to highlight it, that's terrific. I want to, then this is reentry specifically to continue your higher education, and right. So, okay. And that's part of the career tech recommendations. I think the reentry stuff is in there, but okay, we definitely got it in here. It's a new item.
Thank you.
Is Diana with
Steve,
us?
I just want to quickly say the reason Andrea brings that up is because it's literally in law. It's part of Pell Restoration, is that they have to provide reentry support for post-secondary students and support other support services. So
In federal law.
yes.
Okay,
And we do have several hands up if we want to go through those.
please call on them, Ainsley. You can see them. I'm not looking.
Christian.
Hi, thanks. Something that I'm not sure we have discussed in the past in regards to the GEDs and adult, GED/adult basic education. Have we considered or thought about, I saw that we're considering evaluating the kind of efficacy of the job force and workforce training programs. Are we also thinking about reviewing the efficacy of our GED curriculum and teaching in facilities, as well as the kind of supports surrounding and helping, incarcerated individuals to prepare for the test? So just curious about, we're thinking about looking at the efficacy of how well we teach incarcerated individuals to prepare for the GED.
It's not in there directly. One of the things I hope that we would talk about, not today, but to look into more is professional development. I think part of it, if you're talking about efficacy, you have to talk about how well your teachers are trained.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that's near and dear to me. One of the things I wish, we also talked about the Correctional Education Association standards, which I used to be an auditor for many years. And those things speak to how well you are doing your instruction. And I would hope that we would, and since Danielle is very much involved with CEA, maybe look at the possibility. For years, I had hoped that CEA could evaluate the programs and come in and do the evaluations of overall, look at those standards. So, and also the American Library Standards for libraries. They've put together correctional education standards. So in order to get at the efficacy of programs, I'd like to get to our professional standards out there and bring them into Maryland as part of the effort at that you're bringing up. And I think it's an excellent point.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree with again, maybe considering adding to this, or just in general, us, thinking about studying again, like you said, the professional development and teacher training and preparation for this.
Okay.
We do have a future items for review section. This interim report was more about the issues we've been discussing. So future items for review, we can definitely add. We have professional development programming for teachers, but we can also add things like tutoring or things like that to study for the future as well.
Are there other hands up you see, Ainsley?
Yes, Adam.
Yes, and it was actually kind of in that to piggyback off what Andrea said, and then it's in the future section of the report. But I think it's very important when we're looking at that reentry piece that, in my opinion, that parole and probation need to be keeping that data for education, so that we don't come and have to have another commission where we're trying to figure out who's supposed to collect what data. Parole and probation are responsible for overseeing people upon release.
So I agree 100%. So that's one of the reasons why we want to. I mean, we can't do everything all at once. It's one of the things we need to do, and really want to. Are we all connected? Are we going? This Department of Public Safety, Department of Labor, Parole and Probation. Are we keeping the same data and sharing it so that people, parole officers, are seeing that and can use that in their work? Probation officers, whatever. So that's a very excellent point. So I keep bringing it up if we're not doing a good job there. So, Ainsley, we have any more hands up?
Yeah, Rochelle.
Sorry, I wonder about the Department of Labor having to follow that information when it comes to post-release, because people are not always going to get jobs that the Department of Labor tracks, as we saw in the subcommittee on whatever it is, workforce development. So I think that really it's one agency, it's one department that should be keeping that data, and I think putting any onus on the Department of Labor in that aspect is going to come with incomplete data sets and people pointing fingers about who should be collecting it.
Well, is Parole and Probation collecting all the data, or are they collecting different data, and then the two ought to be put together? I don't know. I'm asking the question. So Adam, do you have any? I don't know. You see, what Parole and Probation is using, and reporting back, is that radically? Does that overlap with labor, or is it totally separate, or shouldn't they both be together? Labor has data, maybe not sufficient, but
it looks like Rochelle has her hands up, and then
I thought Adam was going to say something, and then is the sound off?
No, I don't know. No, I just.
Oh, you don't know? Okay. Well, that's a good question for us then. Who's got the data? And just put it together. Okay.
Yeah, I can test that. One of the reasons why we did the data sharing interagency agreements with Maryland Longitudinal Data System is because they do have all that data. They had They have education data, they have K through 12 data, they have post-secondary data, they have now labor's correctional education data, they have the data on labor's data on employment and wages and that sort of thing. So that was the reason why we looked to them to be able to collect and maintain all that data for us and get us those reports. They now have our recidivism data, our data on releases and everything. So I kind of agree with you, Adam. Having one agency that does not have access to all of that data and the ability to get that data, we could even work with them to get the parole and probation data into there. That's not a problem. It's part of our data set, not an issue. So that is something that, yes, needs to be looked at, is what is that one agency that can collect all the data and has access to every single one of those points that we need, right? And has access to all that availability for that. You're right. But parole and probation does not have access to wage data. They don't have access to certain other things. If somebody comes out and is not on parole and probation, they don't have access to their data, right? So like there's certain things that they can't keep. They're that touch point, right? But that is not the whole of it, I guess is what I was trying to say. Yeah. There was something else really quick I want to add, Steve. On that page 8, it talks about incentives. And I really want to clarify that because it says incentives may de-incentivize GED completion due to the decreased number of diminished credits after GED completion. We have COMAR now that has diminution credits for post-secondary. We have diminution credits for completion of occupational programs. They get diminution credits for being in class, post-secondary classes, occupational classes. So there are incentives post-release for them or post-GED completion that they can do, even in the reentry, the transition life skills classes and stuff. They get diminution credits for sitting in those and taking those classes and finish. So they do get post-GED incentives. Those are available for program completion. So I just wanted to clarify that because I'm not quite sure where that came from.
Hey, Daniel, are they available for everybody? Because I think they're exclusions based on convictions and when people were incarcerated.
It is only for, like, there's different number of diminished credits based on your that's for the completion one, right? But like just to go to class and sit in class, everybody gets that.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, but you, depending on your conviction, is how many of those credits you get upon completion.
We want to look at that as part of the incentives. These are just, in the outline here, are placekeepers for items. And we want to put a good definition of a couple lines under each one of these when we turn in the report. So the ABGD special ed group is looking at this. So Danielle, when we write this now in the next couple of weeks, you know,
Yeah,
let's
when we
be
talk,
more active, more inclusive, okay?
yeah, when we talk in the leadership meetings, we could talk about that. Yeah.
Because I would really like to learn more about how this the diminution stuff has worked now and how it's evolved. It's one of those items.
Rochelle.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to go back to the GED section. I wanted to first respond to what Christian had to say around the training, which I believe is completely appropriate for us to examine. I would hope we would examine what's currently in place because we do have a new professional learning framework that's job embedded. That's been developed this year for teachers. We have regional trainings. So I would hope, I'm happy to bring that work here as it speaks to the preparation of teachers to prepare our incarcerated individuals for the GED. And we actually, our GED pass rate in correctional education is actually higher than the state's. Now, actual numbers is where we're trying to gain ground. But I did want to speak to, I don't know if this is part of the discussion, but it says there is a low level of GED completion hindering entry to post-secondary, which I don't exactly agree with. I wasn't a part of that discussion, but I do feel like it offers a great opportunity to talk about sort of what we're already engaged in, which is post-secondary lives in correctional education. And GED, all of the programmatic things, GED, transitions, occupational and special education live in the Department of Labor under correctional education. So we have to do some alignment. We talk about coming to the graduations, giving out brochures, but it's not a K-12 model, which is, in a K-12 model, you have your students, there's someone connecting to your students prior, a counselor, right? School counselor connecting and saying, well, what do you want to do and where are you going to go next? And so we don't have that pipeline structure now. Now, what we have done is we've gotten a student success specialist in our transitional program to begin doing some of this work, but I don't necessarily agree that there is a correlation between GED completion and post-secondary. So I just want us to examine that and maybe do a broader examination in this group of post-secondary and GED and how that all works.
So really quick, we do a vast variety of outreach to our population for post-secondary. Not only do they have it on the tablets as that what post-secondary is available, are different program directors at the facilities that offer it go and speak to and have different information sessions with all of them. They talk to them on a very often basis for the entire population, not just those in GED courses. So it is not that we are specifically going into GED courses at that, but we are talking the entire population because not everybody coming out of GED is going into post-secondary. It's the entire population. There's people with high school diplomas and GEDs throughout all. So we touch base with all 17,000 IIs for post-secondary programming that is available.
No, I agree. And that's why I feel like the way that the sentence is structured, it just isn't accurate.
Well, you'll have an opportunity when we meet on the committee we're going to try to flesh this out and make them, so that not everybody will agree, but if the committee finally says, okay, this is pretty much what we're going with it, that's what we're going to put into the interim report. So that we will be having those meetings in the next, few weeks. And Ainsley, by the way, just reminding people, when are the ABE GED special ed meeting? When is the next one for that?
So they're at the end of the month. But I also think that if people have really strong opinions or want to work on this further, I'm sure that we can schedule things before then or after then or in between. So I can send a follow-up email with those dates, but we're flexible if people want to meet other times as well.
And I will say this, when we submit the interim report, and hopefully we get a pretty good consensus from each committee what those items are, it's not set in concrete. These are issues that we are going to be looking at more and more. So if they're not necessarily going to be complete, or not everybody's going to agree how they're worded, but everybody's going to have input into how we do that. We're not going to make any recommendations to issues are one thing. Recommendations section is where if we really feel solid that we need to make some recommendations to the governor, to the legislature, we will list those with some specific things in the final report. And so there are some things that probably boil to the top already that look like they might be recommendations, but each one of those recommendations is going to have a lot of definite support from the commission and from the people that put them together before we ever make them. Okay.
Steve, can I just say, I want to make sure that the voices of the commission members, especially those who are appointed to the commission who are previously incarcerated, are not being drowned out by state employees and even my voice, right? There's a reason why these people were put on here, and a lot of this stuff that's on there came from them. And I just wanted to make sure that our justice involved population that is sitting here, and even those sitting right here now are having that voice and continue to have that voice.
The final voice on this, on these reports will be the commission. The stakeholder groups are made up some commissioners, but also lots of folks some who are state employees and some who are not. And they're really bright and good people. And so but the commission is going to have to approve the report. We're not going to turn it in unless it's approved by the commission. And we have 4 or 5 returned citizens on this commission, and their voices have been terrific. And I'm very pleased with their inclusion on this commission. Okay.
Delegate Pasteur.
Thank you. I'm on my phone, so I didn't know whether my hand was really up or not. Thank you. You've answered, I think, a little bit in this last couple of conversations, so I'll start backwards. Making sure that those who have been incarcerated have a strong voice in this, because they said, which goes to my next point about the interim, they are able to really articulate what things that we know we have on paper are really happening with fidelity in the prisons and on a regular basis, because those are the things that, in terms of recommendation, that need to come back to the legislature, so we can not be of the mind that all is more or less well, that we have all of these things in place, when we know that sometimes they're shut down for whatever reason, and so people are losing instructional days, etc. I don't need to go on, because sometimes I get these meetings confused. So I think that's important. And so we need to make sure that what we're getting as legislators are the things that, one, we know need to happen, but also, and the things that we see on paper are happening, but what it really looks like from the inside. So I think this is a good conversation in terms of looking at this interim report, because it certainly gives fodder to why this needs to be extended, because I think we're so far away from some of the things that really need to happen to make a difference. And we wouldn't have this commission if we didn't know already that there's a lot of work to be done on our part. Maybe not in terms of all of you, but there are a lot of things we don't know that we need to address.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely, really, you underlined some of the crucial parts. It must be real, the stuff we say, that makes sense. And people who, the best source we have for that are the 5 or so people on our commission who have come out in recent years and can say, well, this does or does not. And by the way, you forgot about this or whatever. Mike Gordon? I'm looking at you shaking your head, so I know, and I've always appreciated your comments and input. Diana said, do you have any comments about the part with, career technology and workforce development?
Yeah, there were some other comments made by several other people, but I would like to see the reentry piece more front and center. And we've already talked about the data collection gaps. And I think too, it would be important to see how we all know that our returning citizens have a number of barriers to employment, but I think we need to be explicit in that. And so some of those barriers are dealt with by the interagency team before the people go out the gate. Both for employment readiness, but also for living in the community. Mm-hmm. So those are my only 2 main things. I think they don't jump out at me enough. So, and there's other members of the subgroup here. I don't know if there's anything else that we missed that should be, again, I know this is not a final deal, but just so we're explicit in this.
Well, I put barriers and more emphasis on reentry, and I think we talked about data a little bit, but that's important. So
we've already talked too about the staffing challenges. both
Right.
in terms of the occupational training areas, as well as the reentry preparation and the workforce development readiness, the transition planning.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So when we have the meeting, next meeting, we're going to try to take this list and what things you have said and really work this through for a more definitive statement that we bring to the commission.
That'd be great. Thanks so much.
So, okay. The barriers thing is really tough though, because we can make all kinds of recommendations, but it's kind of beyond our control about a lot of this stuff. But to highlight it, that there are these barriers and people are aware of them is important.
Well, I think not just the barriers, but also some strategies to address the barriers. So for
Mhm.
example, in Maryland, there's never enough resources, but a lot of times the information just doesn't get to the returning citizen to know where they are. Because they're often, let's say if you go back to Western Maryland, which there aren't that many, but they don't know where the transitional housing is in many cases. Or our staff that's in Baltimore based, they don't know Western Maryland. They might as well think it's Ohio. So I mean, it's really tighten up some of that information and resources. And that's where our library partnerships come in. I realize internet access is non-existent for the most part, but there's got to be ways that we can do better at getting those resources to people in
Okay.
a timely manner.
All right. I'm watching the time here. So does anybody else have their hand up, Ainsley?
Mika?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to make it quick because I know that we're approaching time fairly quickly. I just want to piggyback off of what Andrea Cantor started and then what Diane just touched on. As GPEP's Director of Professional Advancement and Continuing Education, I asked a lot of our both current student body inside the prison and those that are coming home, if you had to rank the hierarchy of your needs, right? What do they look like? And what I hear most often is the top three is employment, housing, and education. And so I just want to highlight that from a lived experience perspective. And then also when we're talking about employment, I think education, I champion education, there's no secret about that, higher ed and specifically, but I do want to say what happens with students after they attain these degrees, right? What does that look like? And I think we need to be really strategic about yes, jobs post-release and what that looks like, but also preparing the student while incarcerated for employment so that when they are released, that there aren't any gaps and there aren't any delays and being sure that we're able to assess and help them reach their needs. So does that look like professional development opportunities while inside, resume building, building in these type of mock interviews? What does that look like? I'm working with an organization right now called the Alliance. It's a national group, and we're working on a project, a year-long fellowship, and it's called Work-Based Learning, where students have the opportunity to actually gain employment while incarcerated. And I think that having gainful employment while incarcerated, connecting folks with employers so that they're establishing these relationships and hopefully helping to bridge the gap post-release, that looks like a person transitioning from the institution to the outside world, not only with just the access to a degree or education or whatever they choose, certificate, what they dream big, however they choose, we support it. However, making sure that students have the financial means to step into society, right? And that seems to be where, in my opinion, where I am struggling with helping people that are in need. And then just to touch on the partnerships, correct. Baltimore City, in my opinion, from my perspective doing this job, is very rich in resources around reentry. So shout out to Maryland for that. However, when I am addressing the needs of students that are from Washington, D.C. or the Eastern Shore, it's a little bit more challenging. So I think we really need to think about community partnerships across each state so that we're capturing all students and their needs, and we're not just solely focusing and catering to those that are returning back to the Baltimore City or Maryland area. So that's just my take.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, and then Christian.
Yeah, so in the workforce development group, I spoke at length about how 20% of MCE's headquarters staff is formerly incarcerated. They fill positions as high as chief administrative officer, high up supervisory fiscal positions, down to entry level. A lot of people have spent too long at MCE and have not been afforded the opportunity to grow throughout the state. And I would really like to push for other state agencies to be that home for individuals, because people do need jobs. MCE trains people in accounts receivable and accounts payable. There's no reason that those ladies that come in every day from MCIW cannot go work for a Department of Labor, cannot go work for any other state agency that exists. To me, the jobs are already there. MCE kind of shows that to a certain extent. I think it's a matter of getting other state agencies aboard, and I would like to say that when the OCO does put out job postings, we are absolutely encouraging people with lived experiences to apply. I think that other state agencies need to follow suit, and that should be part of the recommendation. I suggested a portal. I don't know how popular that is. A portal for formerly incarcerated on the job apps, where they can go in and they can see positions specifically for them. I mean, why not give people opportunities that were not given to them prior? So yes, I agree with everything that Ms. Robinson Peoples was saying, and that's my piece.
Adam, really quick, are you talking about the Maryland job apps, like specifically on there? Like, I think like that they could go in.
I'm not really good at technology, Danielle. I got to be honest with you, but I don't care how it happens, but it just should happen.
Saying that, like for
there's
state
portals, there's portals,
state jobs. Yeah.
there's portals all over the place. Yeah, people build portals all the time.
But that's just the one used for state jobs. That's why I was just asking. Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
talking about hiring people for state jobs.
Right.
Okay. And what better example would be the state to hire people that they've supposedly helped re-enter and be successful, you know? Okay. Do we have any more hands up, Ainsley?
Yes, Christian, and then Delegate Embry.
Thanks, Ainsley. Just one other thing I just thought about, and it's possibly an area for future study or consideration, is that Maryland was approved for the Medicaid Section 1115 waiver, which lets incarcerated individuals access those Medicaid dollars up to 90 days before they're released. So just want to kind of bring that up as, you know, something else we need to kind of throw in the mix, right? This additional resource, right, for us, or can we possibly contribute to education? Just wanted to kind of remind us of that. And it's something, and also I just Googled it real quick. It says this is managed by Department of Health, the Maryland Department of Health. So maybe they also, like I said, maybe consider bringing them in the mix with that. But just wanted to remind us about that Medicaid waiver.
Okay. Very important. Delegate Embry.
Thank you. There's a reference in the beginning to federal funding, evaluating whether federal funding is being utilized, but I don't see that in the report. And Christian's point about Medicaid is one of the examples. So I just wondered if we could pull that out of the committee's work.
Gotcha. Are you referring to this says state and federal funding over here and then federal funding over here? I think what those are referring to, at least, is I know that ABEGED SPED gets money for adult education. We get some money from Perkins grants for career and technology, and also Pell grants. Is there like something specific you wanted to see in this report about those programs?
Whether we're utilizing them sufficiently.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's those funds are traditionally going to correctional education. and, you know, for adult ed, special ed, Title I, what have you, and now Pell Grants. But I thought you might be referring to, in the context of this last discussion, of federal funding available, like we talked about Medicaid and other things as well, and whether they're being utilized for reentry purposes or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it broadly, just I think that is part of one of our, you know, goals for the group. But anyway,
Yeah, it might be when we finally do an annual final report, which would probably be November, we could, you know, it might be a section and maybe put this down. What funds are available for what? You know, I mean, would it be for supportive education behind the bars? Would it be transition? You know, and then the transition job prep, you know, whatever it comes in. And the Department of Labor has a lot of those funds.
Steve,
Health Department must have some of those others too, you know, so it's housing, you know.
Steve, as a caveat to that, so yes, Department of Labor does get all the adult basic ed, GED, so the adult ed grant, the CTE through Perkins and special ed and N&D, all that kind of stuff. And then of course the higher ed gets all the Pell funding and stuff when they apply for Pell. Now Medicaid would come, like DPSCS would take, you know, we have support that with the Medicaid through MDH and everything. But as a caveat to that, that might be something we want to look at a later time, because I don't know if any of you know what's happening right now with federal funding for adult education. It has literally been put on the skinny budget to completely be eliminated, all adult education funding. So not knowing what's going to happen in October with the federal budget, I think that's something that, you know, we definitely look at. Absolutely, depending on what happens October 1st, right, with the federal budget, because that's something the state might have to look at down the line. Yeah,
no, that's fair. I just want to make sure that's in our
absolutely. It's a great
in our purview.
Good one to make.
And just a general number, 10% I think of the correctional education budget is federal. I mean, we talk about Title I, ABE, Perkins.
Oh, Rochelle can add to that. That is not true. Not when we come to what is given to the actual incarcerated learner and what is used in our facilities to actually.
So what is the percentage? Is it something we need to know? We should be able to figure that out.
Labor can get that to you, but it's definitely not 10% when we talk about what is actually used for the incarcerated individual to be able to provide services behind the fence. So,
okay. That's an old number that used to be, so I'd like to know what the new one is. Okay. Okay. Have any more questions, suggestions? Where are we? We're at the end of our time here. My goodness, it's 11:30 exactly. So, I appreciate all I've been trying to take some notes, and Angie and I will go back over the notes, and get them back out to you. And we have some future meetings of each of these committees. So the next step, I think what we're going to try to do is have an interim report with some fat on it, you know, changing this outline a little bit, new topics, or more maybe a hierarchical thing. I mean, we'll talk to the committees, and in preparation for having a report done by the end of June to send to the governor. So we're going to ask the committees to look at these items that they've been working on and come up with some better, more definitive wording, more inclusive maybe, and then we'll bring this back to the commission for approval. The stakeholders make the recommendations that the commission approves. So, okay. So that will be our process for the next meeting. And I really appreciate all the participation from the delegates, particularly from Delegate Empery's office. I'm sorry that Empery couldn't be on the call, but believe me, he's been connecting with us, particularly through Ian, quite regularly. And I do appreciate that, and shows his tremendous interest in this area. As Ian said, it's very personal from his family that he work in this area. So, Ian, thank you so much again for your participation. Thank all your delegates, all the 3 delegates that were on also, and everybody else. And if there's are there any other comments before we ask for a motion to close the meeting? Anybody?
gonna add something real quick. If any of you guys have more edits or things that you want to put in here, like just let us know. We're very open to feedback. So I'll put my email in the chat.
Send it to me, send it to Ainsley, send it to both of us. We put them all together and we go over them ourselves. So, okay, Gordon, do you have a question or comment?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a statement. I think that you and Ainsley are doing a real good job with this group. I think that the people who are engaged in this are really making a big difference. I think collaboration is really, really important. When you don't have that, you kind of miss things. So I think everybody is making relevant points. I would caution people, nobody wants to look bad. Nobody wants the department to look bad. I get that. So the objective is and shouldn't be to make a department look bad, but to identify areas where we can make improvements in. And it's ways of making those statements without a department looking like they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So I just want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Always keeping things on the positive, looking for ways to improve, but we definitely want to get stuff out there that are important that need to be changed or just problems we need to solve, and if we can. And if we can't, we need to make recommendations. So, okay. I will thank everybody. And can I get a motion to close the meeting? Somebody? Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Me and Gordon.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.